أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. قال الله تعالى أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. صدق الله العظيم. Well, respected brothers, alhamdulillah, it is a blessed occasion. We had quite a few more people for Salat al-Asr and then they ran off. So the beauty in this gathering is that we are the chosen ones, I guess. We could be somewhere else, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen us to be here and has chosen us to be able to at least gain some sort of knowledge. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. Spread the message from me, even if it is only one word, one ayah, one verse, one point. So I'm here today, inshallah, just to share with you some of my thoughts, some of my preparations, according to the Quran and Sunnah, according to how we should be preparing for this blessed month of Ramadan. With anything, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With every khutbah that you hear on Yawm al-Jum'ah, we start with an Alhamdulillah or Alhamdulillah, which is basically reminding us that we must be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for every single ni'mah, for every single blessing. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the fact that we can actually thank Him, because this is the best thing that we should be thankful for, the fact that we can actually say Alhamdulillah. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Alhamdulillah, ala ni'matil Islam, for the blessing of Islam, the fact that we can say, I am a Muslim, I say La ilaha illallah, and I believe in it. For this we must say thank you, and we must praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And on top of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses for us times in the year where we get the opportunity to be closer to Him for our own benefit. And at the moment, as Ramadan is around the corner, we could say we are at the doorstep of Ramadan. We need to ask ourselves the question, what are we doing, what have we done to prepare for it already? Because there's only a small group, inshallah, I'll be asking you some questions, if that's okay. So just raise your hand if you know the answer. This first question I want to ask is a quick fire question. I want you to try and answer it as quick as possible. Does anybody know how many days we have left until the beginning of Ramadan? Does anybody know? Take a guess, anyone?
20.
3 weeks, 20? How many days?
20.
22, 20. So there's around 20, depending on which day it starts, obviously. The reason why I wanted you to answer that question, and I think we've got a very shy group of people, I wanted you to ask the question because I wanted to know who has already looked on their calendar, tried to work out how many days are left, and thought, well, if it starts on this date, then we have this many days left. If it starts on that date, then we have this many days left. And I'm already looking at my calendar, seeing what day it's going to be, seeing if I'm working on that day or not, seeing what time Salat al-Isha is going to be on the night before, when is Taraweeh beginning, am I working the next day, so do I need to get an early night, what time is Suhoor, and so on. Have we already looked at these timings? Because this is in essence preparation. Now if we have about 19, 20, 21, 22, 20 days let's say, we've got 20 days left inshallah. If we get to see Ramadan, we have 20 days. Does anybody know how long the companions used to prepare for before Ramadan used to start? There's a narration where it gives a specific time. Does anybody know what it is? 6 months, mashallah. 6 months before, they're already preparing. They're saying that in 6 months Ramadan is starting, I'm going to start today. What am I going to do? Where am I going to improve? What do I need to know? What do I need to remove from my system, and so on. So 6 months ago, were we already preparing for Ramadan? We may have mentioned it, but were we actively preparing? Now for some of us, we probably didn't even know when Ramadan is going to start. How many days left? Is it this month? Is it next month? Are we in May already? Subhanallah, time is flying by. So for us, today's, inshallah, the niyyah for today, the intention for today is, if we can take anything, it's the fact that Ramadan is around the corner. And we need to make a start from today. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam reminds us with the hadith, which I'm sure many of us, if not all of us, know, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Indeed, the weight of an action determined by its intention. So our actions are determined by our intention. So even if we don't get to see Ramadan this year, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we hope and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Imaam said in the dua after salah, Allahumma ballighna Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the ability to see Ramadan at least. And if we are not the fortunate ones, meaning that if we have to leave this earth before Ramadan comes, then at least we said that today in the masjid, after Salat al-Asr, we read a few things and we listened to a few things, and we started to prepare. So I told myself from this very moment that this Ramadan will be my best Ramadan. This Ramadan will be the Ramadan where I will change so many things. And this Ramadan we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it will be a witness for us, not a witness against us. And this is what we should start with. So I ask you, my dear brothers, to at least make that intention now. Make the intention, whether out loud or in your heart, that this Ramadan, inshaAllah ta'ala, I will make a change and I will do something differently. How should we see Ramadan? Many people use different analogies. I'm going to use one because we have a few youngsters here and I'm sure we've all experienced schooling. We should see Ramadan like a school, but a spiritual school. Which, unfortunately, and the reality is, not all of us will graduate from this year. But the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means that every single year we get to go back and repeat the year again. And we get to go back and repeat the year again and again and again and again, until our very last breath. So what is it that we need to learn from this school? Like any school, like any madrasa, like anywhere where you are learning, there's a time that comes when you have examinations. And if anybody has an exam, if we have an exam in 20 days, should we be revising already or not? Of course the answer is yes. Some of us, and I remember the days when we were revising for our exams, and sometimes we'd leave it last minute. Some people call it lastminute.com. Where the night before, we stay up all night, we'd get all of our books in front of us, 10, 15 books, and we're trying to learn everything at once. And then by the time the exam comes, we're thinking, man, if only I started 20 days ago. If only I started 2-3 days ago. Alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah, we are being reminded today that we have 20 days. If we haven't already started, then at least we have 20 days to prepare for the exam. You may have heard the saying, failure to prepare is preparing to fail. So if we fail to prepare for Ramadan, then we are leading ourselves up to fail. And yes, we can fail in this month of Ramadan. There are ahadith, which I'll come to a bit later on, which specifically talk about people who will fail in the month of Ramadan. And the Prophet ﷺ, you may recall a hadith when he's climbing up the mimbar on Jum'ah, and he's saying Ameen, and then he says Ameen, and then he says Ameen 3 times. And the companions ask him, well, why are you saying Ameen? We've never heard you do this before. What is it? And one of the points is that the one who sees Ramadan and he is not saved from the hellfire, and he is not taken benefit, he's not being forgiven, then may Allah curse him and may Allah throw him away, keep him away. This is something which we are fearful of. So yes, you can fail in Ramadan. Again, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us and to keep us from this adhab, this punishment. So we must revise, we must prepare. If anybody had an interview in 20 days, an interview for a job, good pay, company car and all that kind of benefits that you get, we wouldn't leave it last minute. We would prepare, we'd know where it is, we'd do our company research, we'd do all of the research that we need to do, and we'd prepare as much as we can, we'd take our notes, we'd even get our clothes ready, iron them up and make sure everything is correct. We'd set our alarm on the night before, sometimes we even go to the place a few days in advance to know where it is, to know where the entrances are and so on. This is what we need to be doing for Ramadan. And as you would for an interview, you do your research. You need to know where you're going, you need to look at the job specification and so on, and say, what is required of me for this job? Similarly for Ramadan, we need to understand what is required of me, what is required of you for this blessed month. We shouldn't think of it as, okay, it's another Ramadan that we see every year. Routine, we wake up early, we pray our Fajr if we can, we have something to eat and we fall asleep all the way till, if it's a weekend, we miss Dhuhr and we wake up whenever we can. That's not what it should be. We should be getting ready in the correct way. Again, we remind ourselves, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. When it comes to Ramadan, the main thing that we think of is siyam or sawm or fasting. What is fasting? What do? We abstain from food and water? Yes. But it's a lot more than that. The word siyam or sawm comes from the word sam, which also comes from another root word, sawama, which comes from the word to stop or to freeze. Some of the Arabs used to say samat al-shams, which means that the shams, the sun, has frozen. And it usually refers to the time when it's right in the zenith, right in the middle, and it looks like it's not going to go either way, it just stays there. So similarly, Ramadan for us is a time where we must stop, we must pause, and it also one of the root words is to pull away. So we, in the month of Ramadan, focus on pulling away from all of the negatives, all of the bad habits. Sometimes we must pull away from the dunya completely. And this is why it's encouraged for us to sit in i'tikaf. And for anybody who has ever sat in i'tikaf, it's, for me personally, I remember I've done it a few times in my lifetime. And I remember the first time I did it, I was quite young. And it's a time where these things go off, you keep them to the side. You don't talk about worldly things. You stay on your own and you really focus on yourself and what your position is in this dunya. What is my purpose here? You're cut off. You pull yourself away from the dunya. Pull yourself away from the pressures of the dunya. Pull yourself away from all the temptations of this world, which are many. And of course, we can think of countless amounts of times where we've been tempted. And sometimes we get pulled in by these temptations, and other times we are strong enough to repel them. So Ramadan is a time to reflect, to look at ourselves and look at the purpose of our creation. And before we start about what we can actually do in Ramadan, how we can actually prepare, it comes down to that knowledge, that research that I told you about. Understanding what Ramadan is and what it means to us and what we should be doing. And from an Islamic point of view, the Islamic definition of some of the words, for example, freedom, what it means to be free from an Islamic point of view, to be truly free, to be truly liberated, is to be free from the chains of our own self, of our own nafs. We are tied down by so many things. Our soul, our nafs, the things that the desires that come into us, it really chains us down. So for Ramadan, it pulls us away from that. Our nafs, our soul is always open to challenges, to tests, to fitna, whether it be haram food and haram environments, whether it's listening to haram music, whether it's interacting with haram people, meaning the opposite sex, and talking to girls and so on. Whatever these distractions are, they are everywhere for us. But the Prophet ﷺ describes it in many ways. And one example, the companion of the Prophet ﷺ, Umar ibn Khattab, he was asked about this dunya. And he was asked, how should we live? And he asked the people, he said, how do you think we should live in this dunya? You know, have you ever heard of the term, the straight and narrow? It's called the straight and narrow because indeed it is a narrow path. The Prophet ﷺ describes that the way to Jahannam is easy. The way to get to Jahannam, there are many, many, many ways to get there. The way to Jannah can be quite difficult sometimes. And Umar ibn Khattab says to his companions around him, if you were walking down a narrow path, a really narrow path, and either side there are thorns and bushes and harmful things, how would you walk? And the companion said, you would take care. He said, exactly. You would take care. You would tread carefully. You would bring your clothes in and you'd make sure on either side so that you're not getting pulled left and right and you're not being harmed by the things on our side. These are visual kind of things that we should be thinking of when we think of this life. And Ramadan itself comes as a protective barrier, as a protective shield. Why? To liberate us. To focus on the things that we're doing wrong, to free us from these addictions, from these habits. We eat, we drink every single day, alhamdulillah. And by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ramadan comes along and no longer are we able to eat, no longer are we able to drink. So the things that are halal for us anyway, suddenly become haram. Suddenly they are forbidden. This water that I've got here, in a few weeks' time, I'm not going to be able to drink it at this time. I'm going to have to wait for another hour or so. What does this mean to us? Ultimately, we ask ourselves, why am I not allowed to drink this water? Why am I not allowed to have some food? Why am I not allowed to do the things which generally are allowed? Firstly, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed, as a brother recited a few moments ago, a couple of ayahs before that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explicitly describes and explains why we must fast. We read بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here says يا أيها الذين آمنوا. And we should pause here actually. Because whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions يا أيها الذين آمنوا, which means O you who believe. Now if I was to ask you here, how many of you claim to be believers? I'm sure you would all raise your hand very shy people, but I'm sure you'd all raise your hand. If I said, do you believe? Of course I believe. Do you believe in Allah? Of course I believe in Allah. Do you believe in the messengers of Allah? Of course I do. If I didn't, then I wouldn't be classed as a believer. Yet when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to you, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, do we think, oh actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here is saying directly a message and an instruction to me. Is that how we feel? When we read ayat of the Quran, does our heart tremble? وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ is a way that is a description of those who when they hear the Quran, their hearts tremble. They think, Ya Allah, Allah's talking to me here. So all the good news is for me, all the warnings are for me, all of the rules and regulations are for me as well. So in this verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, fasting is prescribed on you as it was prescribed on those before you, meaning it's a fard upon you. If you are able to do so, you must fast. And even if you cannot fast for a legitimate reason when you're old enough and baligh and so on, you still have to make up for it. You still have to catch up. And then at the end of the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains why we actually fast. Why? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may attain piety. And I'll come to that a little later on, inshallah. So the month of Ramadan is prescribed, it is a fard, and that is why we fast ultimately. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said so. But what are the benefits of it? And what does it mean to us? One of the things I want to focus on, inshallah, is the fact that Ramadan and fasting, it disengages us from the addictions in our life. And one of the main things that we are, you could say addicted to, but also it's a necessity, is food and drink. And until we have our food and drink, usually nothing else matters. Fill our stomachs first, and then you go on to other things. And in the month of Ramadan, when you start to feel and hear that rumble in the stomach, you should be asking yourself the question, well, why is that there? And you say, because I'm fasting. And why am I fasting? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prescribed it. And what benefit does it have to me? And that's where the list should begin. Because it teaches us self-discipline, yes. Because it teaches us empathy and sympathy towards those who don't have anything. So we are thankful and grateful for all that we have. So that we become close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that we remove these addictions and these bad habits that we have. All of these things should be coming into our mind. But one point I want you to try and remember, inshallah, is that fasting in the month of Ramadan, it shows us, it teaches us that there is another world beyond filling our stomachs. There is something else out there which is not only about tasting nice food and tasting sweet things, but instead fasting actually teaches us to taste the sweetness of Iman, taste the sweetness of Salah, taste the sweetness of Quran in a different point of view. So fasting isn't about celebrating eating. It's not to celebrate eating, because when it comes to iftar time, our usual routine is we stuff our faces and we eat so much, usually. Majority of people, some of us don't, alhamdulillah. But usually we eat so much that we can't move. We think we've fasted all day, now I need to make up for lost time, and I start eating and I start eating. Actually, if anything, fasting is actually supposed to be to celebrate not eating. Instead, is to celebrate the fact that we can keep something aside, we can leave something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for His blessing and for His mercy. When it comes to eating, what did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to eat when he broke his fast? It's reported, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا أفطر, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to break his fast, يفطر على ثمر. He used to open his fast with a date, أو على ثمرة, or you could say a few pieces of dates or a few dates, أو ماء, or water. Now we say, yeah, I know that he used to, sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to open the fast with dates and water. That's why I do it as well. I have a date, or 2, or 3, or 5, or 10, or however hungry we are, and I have water, and then I go into my own mode where I start to eat whatever it is I want to eat. And we eat so much that we can't move. And then suddenly it's time for Salat al-Isha, and we say, right, it's Isha time. Right, the routine is I need to pray 4 rakat, and then some sunnah, and then I need to pray 20 rakat of taraweeh, and automatically your mind starts to think, oh my God, I've got so much to go towards the night. And if you've ever experienced, like I've experienced a few times in my life, the person next to you who's had a nice healthy meal, and he lets out a nice burp, and you can physically almost taste and smell the food that he had a few hours ago, what does that say about our prayers? And I'm not saying that this is everyone, but this does happen. And this is what's happening in our communities, in our masajids and so on. Imam al-Shafi'i is reported to have said that I have never eaten till I'm completely full, ever. Some say it was 18 years or something, but others say he's never done it. I've never eaten till my full. Why? Because it makes you lazy in your salah. And I'm sure we can understand that. If we've ever eaten till we're so full, and then it's prayer time, we automatically start to yawn, we start to feel lazy, we can't even stand properly, we start slouching, and we start to wobble and itch and fidget and so on. Sometimes we rub our bellies and all sorts of stuff. Why? Because our concentration, khushu' is not there. Because we've eaten so much. We come to salah bored. We come to salah, like I said, yawning and not in the right frame of mind. We haven't prepared for salah. So another point this year, inshallah, for all of us, whether we are already, mashallah, already healthy and looking good or not, we need to focus on what we eat, when we eat it, and how that's going to affect our mind and our souls. The Prophet ﷺ teaches us that the value of our salah is only worth the extent of the presence of our heart in salah. So if our heart is in the salah, then our salah is correct. If we're not really into it, all we're thinking about is why did I eat so much? What time am I going to sleep to wake up in the morning? Then our salah is not correct. And this month of Ramadan is a month of concentrating on our salah. The early scholars used to say, ضيقوا نجارش الشيطان أو الشيطان بالجوع. Restrain and narrow the passages of the shaitan inside the human veins by hunger, meaning by fasting. Because when we are hungry and when we're not extremely full, shaitan finds it more difficult to get in. And now you may say that in the month of Ramadan, the hadith narrates that إذا دخل رمضان فتحت أبواب الجنة وغلقت أبواب جهنم وسلسلة الشيطان or shayateen. That when the month of Ramadan enters, the doors of Jannah are open and the doors of Jahannam are closed and the shaitans are chained up, so I'm safe. You may think that. But actually what this hadith is talking about is the fact that in the month of Ramadan, the doors of Jannah are open, meaning the ways for us to enter Jannah are countless. There are so many ways. And the doors of Jahannam are closed means the way for us to be saved from the Jahannam are so many. And this is what Ramadan we should be focusing on. And then the final point, that the shaitan is locked up. Now the scholars say that it's the main shaitan, Iblis, who's locked up. But the shaitans that we all have within us, every single one of us has a shaitan with us. Right now we have a shaitan with us. They are still live and kicking, they are active. So in the month of Ramadan, when you do mistakes, it's yourself and your own shaitan, if you like. It's your own mistake. You can't blame it on you. Say, oh, it was shaitan that distracted me. In the month of Ramadan, it's your own self. And fasting is a protection. It is a shield to protect us. Ultimately, the end of the ayah, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, talks about taqwa. What is taqwa? This is another thing we should be focusing on in preparation for Ramadan. If somebody was to ask you, what is taqwa? We should automatically have a response. Because I know what it means and I'm ready to make this affect my life. What is taqwa? What does it mean? Does it mean just to think of Allah? Because yeah, it is what it means. To become pious, what does to become pious mean? To think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as possible? Yes. But how do we attain this taqwa? It is a shield for us. It is a protection for us. It is consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what do we need to have protection from? Now you could say our nafs, and you could say shaitan, you could say our bad habits. All of these things come under this word taqwa. If we want to attain taqwa, if we want to have consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs to be strong enough. It needs to be brilliant before the month of Ramadan even begins. If we start in the month of Ramadan, we say, right, I'm not going to do anything. On the first of Ramadan, that's when I'm going to open my Quran. That's when I'm going to start fasting. That's when I'm going to leave all my bad habits and backbiting and my smoking and my listening to haram and so on. And then we've already missed out on 20 days. We can actually start from today. Why not pick up a Quran today and say, I'm going to start my khatam today? Yes, you will get more reward in Ramadan. Yes. But why not start now, complete it and then complete it again in Ramadan? Why not start reading the translation in Ramadan? Why not do something different this year? If every year we pray 5 times a day in Ramadan, but we don't outside. Then this year you say, I'm going to pray 5 times. I'm also going to pray Qiyam al-Layl. I'm also going to stay up for Ishraq, the sunrise prayer, in which is narrated that the reward is like Hajj, and some say like Hajj and Umrah. I'm going to start doing these different things, so that when Ramadan comes and leaves, these things are ingrained in my system, and I'm going to continue them. So if Ramadan comes and we're still backbiting, we're still swearing, we're still doing all of these things that we shouldn't really be doing, then at least you can focus on them and say, actually, these are part of my nafs now, and I need to remove them. So if you start to focus on them now, start to ask yourself a question. You can even ask your true and honest friends. I've done this before. I say to my true and really close friends who you trust and say, listen, I want you to be honest with me. Tell me some of my bad habits. Sometimes I may do stuff that I don't realize. Just let me know with confidentiality. And someone might say, you know what, sometimes when we're sitting in a gathering, you tend to backbite a lot. Sometimes you use swear words and I don't feel comfortable, but I can't say anything. Sometimes when we're sitting and you're not doing anything, you start listening to music and you shouldn't be doing it, but you do it anyway. You start to smoke and whatever else it is. Start to realize and recognize where our shortcomings are. Because if we have shortcomings and we have mistakes and we have dirt on our hearts and our hearts are not pure, and then we turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we say, Ya Allah, accept my dua, Ya Allah, I need this from you, Ya Allah, I need that from you. Another narration in which the Prophet ﷺ is saying that the people who go to Allah with malbasu haram, their clothes are haram, mat'amu haram, their food is haram, and they're basically, all they're doing is haram, and then they turn to Allah and say, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Rab, Ya Rab. How can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reply to them? Allah saying, how can I do that? I see my servant as my servant sees me. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. So if I trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the sense that I have hope in Allah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me what I am asking for. If I go half-heartedly, you might accept my fasting, I might change, you might accept my du'as. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not come to you with 100% because you are not going to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with 100%. And that's what makes it fair. So when somebody puts extra effort in, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes to them rushing. And when somebody who's half-hearted, not really bothered, doesn't really care, then it's not guaranteed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come to you in the same way. So fasting itself, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about it? In the Hadith Qudsi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that كُلُّ أَعْمَالٍ, every action for Ibn Adam, for the son of Adam, لَهُ إِلَّا الصِّيَامِ, is for him except for fasting. فَإِنَّهُ لِي وَأَنَا أَجْزِي بِهِ. For indeed fasting is for me and I will reward accordingly. Now you may think, well, why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala single out fasting for this special reward? Generally speaking, if I do a good deed, you may get 1 reward, you may get 10 reward, you can get up to 700 reward, we know that. But in the month of Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that fasting is for me, I will reward it however I want. It can go up to countless numbers. Now one of the reasons why the scholars mention that this fasting is described in such a way is because it has unique characteristics. Now if I was telling you that I'm fasting now, you would never know. I might not drink this water. I'm not fasting, by the way. But if I was to tell you I'm fasting, you don't know. If I go around the corner and I have some water, some juice, some fruit, you would never know. If I go over there and I start smoking, you would never know. If I start swearing behind closed doors, you never know. If I listen to something haram, if I watch something haram, who would know? There's no riyah, there's no showing off in this. Whereas when I come for salah, prayer, people see me praying and they think, you may think, oh mashallah, his brother's praying. He was here for fajr, he's here for dhuhr, now asr, and he'll probably be here for maghrib and isha. MashaAllah. May Allah make us one of them. There is a way for us to have this showing off riyah in our hearts. But with fasting, it's between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if I tell you I'm fasting in Ramadan, and I go around the corner, and I go in my car, and I go in my room, and I lock the door, and I do something which is completely haram, nobody knows except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for us who, when we fast, and we behave, and we control ourselves, when nobody else is looking, and I keep away from that food or that water that's there, and I keep away from this video that I shouldn't be watching, and I keep away from this song or this type of music that I shouldn't be listening to, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking and saying, my servant here is doing what I asked. For my sake, I will reward him accordingly. Same goes for lowering our gaze. Same goes for all the other things that we should be doing anyway. While we are fasting, for some reason, it seems to be a little bit easier. For those of us who do bad habits in Ramadan, suddenly we are heightened, we are alert about everything. And that's what taqwa is. Being alert about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes and keeping away from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes. Keeping this in mind, my dear brothers and sisters, we move on to purity. And what does Ramadan do for us with regards to our character? It purifies us and it builds our character. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam reported to have said, "As-sawmu junnatun." The fasting is a shield, is a barrier for us. And one way that we can control this and one way that we work on this is through our salah. So if anything in the month of Ramadan, if we're not already doing it, we focus on our prayer. Because inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. Indeed, the salah, it protects us, it keeps away from fahsha, munkar, trials, temptations, and sinful actions. This is what we should be thinking about. Fasting is such a beautiful thing that it even gives us a response for somebody who wants to cause an argument with us. If somebody wants to argue with me in Ramadan or you in Ramadan, do you know what the response is? Somebody comes to you and says, you're this and you're that, and they want to fight with you. Now, if somebody does it today, you might say, well, it's not Ramadan and I'm not fasting, so I'm going to sort them out. I'm going to reply with something which is even worse, to calm them down and to show them who's boss. But in Ramadan, if somebody comes to answer you, because we're supposed to be thinking in a different way, there's a reply. You say, Allahumma inni sa'im, or inni sa'im, which means I'm fasting. I'm not even going to respond to you. And if we start doing this in Ramadan, then outside of Ramadan, if somebody comes to us and does the same, this training kicks in and says, you know what? I don't need to reply. I don't need to stoop down to their level. There's a saying that somebody once said, never argue with a fool, because they will bring you down to their level and they will beat you with experience. So similarly, when somebody comes to you and they're being foolish, ignorant, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. If a jahil, an ignorant person comes to you and causes problems to you, just reply to them with peace and say, please forget it. I'm not going to waste my breath. Ramadan is a way for us again to focus on that. And the reason why I'm talking about all of these important aspects of Ramadan is because, as I mentioned in the beginning, when we're preparing for something, we must understand it and we must know what we need to do to succeed. When we're going for that interview, we need to know what we need to say, we need to know the answer to the questions so that we can succeed and we can get this job. The difference here is Ramadan is not for a job, it's not for a certificate, it's not for graduation, it's not for something which is worldly. It could be the difference between Jannah and Jahannam. It could be the thing that gets you into Al-Jannah, and that's what we should be focusing on. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us Al-Jannah, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us protected from An-Nar. For Ramadan to come, it's around the corner, as I mentioned. We've talked a lot about food, we've talked a lot about drink, we've talked a lot about how we should be controlling what we eat and controlling what goes into our mouth. But at the same time, we've mentioned about controlling what comes out of our mouth, controlling our speech and controlling our actions. The Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, he who does not give up uttering falsehood, he who does not give up bad words and bad actions or acting upon them, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need you to give up your food and water. There is no point in not eating and not drinking if we don't change other characteristics. If we don't change the way we speak, if we don't change the way we walk and talk, if we don't change our routines, there's no point in us fasting. There's no point in us not eating and drinking. We sometimes are so careful. I remember when we were younger and somebody would put bakhur on, this attar, these smoky agarbattis used to call them. And you'd be afraid to even breathe that in, thinking, oh, it might break my fast. I'm so cautious. Yet when it comes to speaking, we say what we want and we think, yeah, Ramadan is about praying, it's about not eating and not drinking and then eating a lot when it's iftar time. That's not what it's about. So we need to prepare, my dear brothers, we need to look at ourselves, we need to see what we need to change. One hadith that I always focus on every Ramadan, because it's a beautiful hadith, is the one in which Prophet ﷺ says, "Man sama Ramadanan imanan wa ihtisaban ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min dhanbih." The one who fasts in the month of Ramadan, the one who fasts, so the first thing is fasting in the month of Ramadan, imanan, with faith, with iman, wa ihtisaban, you could say is like having hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's reward. غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِهِ. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes the sins which are previous to it. And we are all sinful. If anyone in here says that they are not sinful, then they are lying. And that's not me talking. This is a narration in which the Prophet ﷺ says that every son of Adam is a sinner. Every single one is a sinner, but the best of the sinners is the one who makes tawbah. So that's something which we focus on. We are all sinners, and we all want our sins to be removed. One of the ways is fasting in the month of Ramadan. The hadith continues, Man qama Ramadan, the one who stands in the night in Ramadan, with Iman, with hope in the reward of Allah, their sins will be removed. The one who stands and catches Laylatul Qadr in the month of Ramadan, with Iman, with hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's reward, then the sins will be removed for that. So these are ways in which we must do it. We keep away from the thing which is usually halal, is water and food and so on, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake. Why? So that when it comes to keeping away from haram, I can tell myself, I kept away from that which was halal for Allah's sake, so why can't I keep away from the haram? And sometimes we come to that crossroads where we have a choice in front of us. The easy option, but you know it's haram, and the slightly more difficult option, which is completely halal. And we're thinking, right, I could take a loan out, I could get involved in interest and riba, I could do this, that and the other. It will make my life a bit easier, not thinking about the consequences. Ramadan is a time for us to really refocus. If anybody here drives a car, every single year we go for an MOT. Ramadan is like your MOT. We go into the garage, we clean our heart, we clean our soul, we clean our mind, ready for the next year. It's a service till next year. Ramadan is another way of describing it, is like putting your phone on charge. I was telling the brother, my battery is low on my phone because it's used and abused constantly. So when Ramadan comes, we plug our charger in and we boost our battery as much as possible. We boost our faith, our connection with Allah, our connection with the masjid, our connection with the Quran and so on. We boost it as much as possible so that when Ramadan goes, we're still high on this Iman. And slowly the battery goes down, and slowly our connection with the masjid does go down, and it's very unfortunate. And then we have other opportunities in Hajj time, the Hijjah, and fasting on Arafah and so on, just to boost ourselves again and again and again. And these are all blessings. The Prophet ﷺ reports that he is a great loser who finds Ramadan and comes out of Ramadan without gaining forgiveness and goodness. If we are not forgiven in the month of Ramadan, then we are losers and we failed. If we do not gain goodness from Ramadan, then we are losers and we fail. As I mentioned earlier, we can actually fail in the month of Ramadan. Again, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to not fail and to pass these tests before Ramadan, so that when Ramadan comes, we are actually forgiven and we actually benefit from it. I'm going to just narrate one story from my local masjid. There was a brother who used to come to the masjid, not a Muslim, and he came one day a few Ramadans ago. And he came a few days before Ramadan and he said, I've heard that you're doing an Arabic course and I'm interested in learning. And also he came because one of the brothers invited him to fix our sound system. He was a mechanic kind of guy. And he came and he sat and he wanted to join the Arabic class. And he came and he sat at the back of the masjid one day and he listened to the salah and he just sat quietly. And he came again and he sat and he listened and he watched. And he came again and he came to the Arabic class and he started to learn the letters and the language and so on. And then Ramadan started and all of a sudden, so usually it'd come for Asr, Maghrib, Isha, there'd be 10, 20, 15 people. Suddenly Ramadan comes along and the masjid is completely full and he's thinking, whoa, what's happened here? Something happened overnight. And we tell him, oh, this is Ramadan, this is what happens, everybody gets excited and the masjids are full. And he thought, oh, this is nice. And he came and he broke fast with us and then he started to fast. He used to travel from a different city to York, work, he was a school teacher and he used to work as a head of multimedia and so on. And he'd work from 9 till 3 or whatever. From there he'd come to the masjid, he'd stay till Asr, stay till Maghrib, break fast, stay till Isha, pray Taraweeh, full 20, not knowing anything, just stand there and just listen and take part. And he did that every single day for 29, 30 days, every day of Ramadan. And he started to grow his beard, and he started to look like a Muslim. And everyone said, MashaAllah, brother, welcome, you are a Muslim. He said, oh, no, I'm not Muslim, I'm just learning. I'm just experiencing. They're like, brother, you must, Ramadan is about to finish. Take your shahada quickly. You've got 10 days left, you've got 15 days left. Quickly, take your. He said, no, I'm going to take my time. And they're all thinking, well, is this guy a spy or something? Is he, is he undercover? He's coming in, he's praying, and he's growing his beard, and he's fitting in, but he's not saying I'm a Muslim. What's going on? And he did it, and he completed it, and he did the whole of Ramadan, and honestly, everyone, we got used to him coming. Ramadan finished, however, Salat al-Eid, and mashallah, we had even more people. We built a new masjid, and we had no space in the new masjid, put it that way, there were so many people. And he's hugging and greeting, they're all saying, mashallah, welcome. He's like, oh, I'm not a Muslim, relax, I'm just experiencing it. People think, okay, fair enough. A couple of days later, however, he comes as same routine, he goes to work, comes to the masjid for Salat al-Asr, and I'm sitting there with 2 or 3 people, and he said, what is going on? Where are all the people? And honestly, that's one time it really hit me, because we're used to it. Ramadan comes, the Muslims come, Ramadan goes, and the Muslims go. It's a routine. But when he mentioned it, and he felt so upset, for me, I felt even more, and I felt ashamed actually. And I said, subhanallah, we are Muslim, we come to the masjid, we fill the masjid. As soon as Ramadan goes, it's like, oh, I can't make it, I'm too busy. We did it for 30 days, and automatically, suddenly, and he was shocked, and I was fearful, because I thought, this guy's witnessed Ramadan, he's witnessed Islam at its peak. He came when the battery was full. He came for an MOT, and he got serviced, and suddenly he's, you could say dead. He was almost like, where is everybody? And I felt so bad. And he came anyway, he continued, and somebody asked him, are you a Muslim yet? And he said, no, I'm just thinking. I'm still, And alhamdulillah, there is a good ending to the story. A couple of weeks later, on the day of Friday, he rang me and he said, Friday is the best day of the week. I said, yes. He said, the Prophet ﷺ used to wear white, I believe, on Jummah. I said, yeah, there's one narration that he wore white. So he said, I've just been to Bradford and I bought some shalwar kameez and I'm coming back with some white clothes and I'm ready to take my shahada. And he chose a few people that day and he said, I want you to be here for my witnessing of my shahada, alhamdulillah. And as we were doing it, he said, can I just say a few words? And he said, I asked you to be here, 2 or 3 people, because you guys didn't push me. You just, a few words you may have said here and there. One smile you gave me when everybody else was on their own. One time where you said, oh, come stand next to me, stand shoulder to shoulder, for example. And he was thinking, well, all right, okay. And they treated him as their own. And he said, this really had an effect on my heart, and these are the small things that led me to Islam. And the reason why I share this story is because we are Muslim, and most of us are born Muslim from the day, from the womb, really. As soon as we come up, we are in a Muslim family. And we grew up in the masjid and so on. Yet we fall into Ramadan as if it's just another routine. We wake up early, we sleep lots, we do Taraweeh half asleep, we do 8 sometimes, or we do 20 sometimes, but we don't actually benefit from it. What I want to do this year, inshaAllah ta'ala, is I want you all to kind of make a promise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because in a gathering like this, when we are in a gathering, even though it's not the biggest gathering in the world, it is a gathering. And the beauty of this gathering is, it is witnessed by angels who are in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any gathering where the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioned, and we read verses from the Quran, it is witnessed by a gathering of angels. And if we put our hand on our heart now and say, I vow I will do my best, that this Ramadan will be my best Ramadan ever, I will change my routine, I will change my habits, I will change my ways, then they'll be witnessed by the angels. And they'll be sent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That the brothers in Neeli Masjid on this very date, they made that promise. And they made that intention that I am going to do something different this Ramadan. And if I was to say, do you want Jannah? They'd all say yes. Do you want to enter the door of Jannah from the special doors? Bab al-Rayyan, for example, will say, of course we do. Then think what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. He's given you so many tools, so many things to do in preparation for Ramadan, so that when Ramadan comes, we don't just let it go by again. And we start Ramadan, our level of Iman here. Ramadan comes and we bring our Iman level there. And the next day, as soon as Ramadan finishes, we're back down to here. Let's not do that, my dear brothers. Let's keep our Iman levels high, so that by next Ramadan, we just top up on top. And then on top, and then on top. So that I can say, last Ramadan was my best Ramadan. And this Ramadan is going to be even better. And next Ramadan, if I am able to witness it, will be even better. I know in the masjid in York, we've had people, since last Ramadan to this Ramadan, we've had plenty of people who passed away. I've prayed Salat al-Janazah for many people. And I'm sure it's the same here. There have been people who've passed away who would be sitting here usually in the pre-Ramadan reminder. They'll be sitting in the masjid and thinking, yeah, I'm going to make a difference this year. They're not here anymore. And there'll be some people who are probably thinking about Ramadan now. They may not even see, I may not even see Ramadan myself. Yeah, I'm preparing for it. And I'm hoping and I'm praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts my intentions, so that when Ramadan comes, if we see it, we are prepared. And if we don't see it, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will look and say, on that day, in that masjid, after Asr, between Asr and Maghrib, the brother was sitting there and he made an intention. He actually said, you know what? With my hand on my heart, I really will make a difference this year. I really will lose my habits, my bad habits. I will try and stop these bad things that I'm doing for the good, for the rest of the year, not just for Ramadan. So create a goal, my dear brothers. If you need to physically write it down, make a list. Go on your calendar and say, Ramadan, I believe, is starting on this date. So the Isha is at this time, Taraweeh will be at this time, it will finish most likely at this time. Ask your Imam, ask the people, when is it going, what's happening? Start to prepare from now. Make a list of what you're going to do. I'm going to memorize this many extra surahs. I'm going to pray this many times extra. I'm going to do this many nawafil. I'm going to pick up the translation this year. I'm going to learn what it's all about. I'm going to attend a halaqah and learn more. Make this promise now. Make a list, make a plan. If you pray already, alhamdulillah, improve. If we're not praying our 5 daily prayers now, and we only do it in Ramadan, there is some goodness in it, yes, but let's continue it. If we start Ramadan one side, and we come out with our iman lower, then surely we are losers. There are many things that we can do, and inshallah I will finish. Fast voluntarily. Monday and Thursday, the Prophet ﷺ used to fast. If we can do it now, start practicing and start preparing. We can start reciting the Quran now, reflecting on the Quran from now. We should follow the sunnah and pray extra sunnahs. Sometimes we pray our salah and we think, sunnah mu'akkada, ghayr mu'akkada, before Asr, we don't have to pray, I'm going to leave it. Sometimes we think, oh well, sunnah after dhuhr, should I pray? I know you're supposed to, but I'm a bit busy, I'll miss it, it's alright. Sunnah could be the difference between Jannah and Jahannam. On your scales on Yawm al-Qiyamah, that 2 rakat sunnah could just push your scales in the right direction, because we are all sinners. Then 2 sunnahs could be the difference. And I always say, usually when I lead the salah in York, I usually say, pray as if it is your last prayer. So when we pray Maghrib inshallah shortly, when we stand for Maghrib, make the intention that this could be my final prayer. This could be the last time I stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is my mobile phone switched off? Like you would if you went for an interview. You wouldn't dare keep your phone on. Yeah, the amount of times we hear the phones go off in the masjid, it's unbelievable. These small things we need to think about. The month of Ramadan is a month of forgiveness. So seek forgiveness now. Get used to seeking forgiveness. So when Ramadan comes, making tawbah is a regular thing. The Prophet ﷺ used to say astaghfirullah 100 times every single day. And the companion used to say, you are the Prophet of Allah, you are Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Muhammad ﷺ. Why do you need to make tawbah? You're guaranteed Jannah. And he said, should I not be abdan shakura, a grateful servant? Should I not be thankful? Yet we are not nowhere near, not even the companions of the Prophet or those that came after him. We need to be making tawbah on a regular basis. Get used to doing it. Give to charity, because giving in charity is what Ramadan is all about. The Prophet ﷺ is reported to be, of course we know he was the most generous. In the month of Ramadan, he would be even more generous, like the blowing wind. Give in charity now and prepare yourself. And the point I said earlier, eat healthy as possible, eat moderately now, so that when Ramadan comes we don't get them cravings, we don't get those, with the addictions that we have, that coffee at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the morning, that if we don't have, we're going to go crazy. Start to focus on that now and say, I'm going to prepare myself for Ramadan. Again, we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts this small gathering. I know that all of the things, if not most of them, are things that we've already said, we've already heard, but the Prophet ﷺ reminds us, ad-deenu nasiha, this deen, this faith of ours, is about giving advice. It's advice for myself, it's advice for you, it's advice for all of us. Again, I thank you for inviting me, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to control our tongues, to control our eyes, and to control our ears. We say, Allahumma balighna Ramadan, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us Ramadan, wa'inna fihi ala siyami wal qiyam, and make us in this month, give us the goodness of qiyam and siyam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our intentions now, intentions for praying full salah, intentions for praying taraweeh, intentions for reading Quran and so on. Make that intention now, so that when the time comes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept it from us. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين أستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.